Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Winder. This is the Going Off the Deep End podcast. The first episode is with a very special guest, Emmy. So we're gonna talk about. I'm basically interviewing her life. So first, we're gonna start off with the past. If you want to talk about how it was growing up.
Ask me a more specific question about that, because that's a very vague one.
Okay, so like we could. You could talk about like growing up in like the neighborhood that you.
My neighborhood?
Yeah.
Okay. My neighborhood was a very interesting one. Very quiet. I lived in the middle of nowhere. That's what I like to tell people. The town that I grew up in, it was very rural. So the surrounding area was like farmland and cornfields. I always tell people my next door neighbor was a cornfield, because it was. So I spent a lot of time outside because of that. I really connected with nature when I was younger. My brother and I, we spent a lot of time playing outside, gardening. My family, we gardened a lot of stuff. We grew a lot of our own fruits and vegetables, flowers as well. That's the downside about my neighborhood, because it was in the middle of nowhere. Even though it was like quiet and peaceful, there wasn't a lot of people to interact with. There wasn't really anyone around my age. There's only 2 people that were. One girl was younger than me, and the other girl was the same age as me and went to school with me. So we kind of became a friend group. The one girl that was my age, we were like best friends since we were 5, because we were on the same bus together, and we were the only 2 girls that were the same age in that neighborhood. Eventually both those girls moved away though, at a pretty young age, like I guess around like 5th grade for me. And then after that, you know, like there wasn't anybody else, so I either had friends from school, or I spent a lot of time on my own actually, or with my brother. Yeah, so our neighbors, they didn't come outside, so we never saw them. We didn't know each other. Like they were not, it wasn't like your neighborly suburban kind of neighborhood, which is what I always wanted my neighborhood to be, but it just wasn't. Now I do have to say, where I live now, it's a very neighborly place, which I love that so much better.
That's good. Can you talk about the relationship with you and your parents? How that was?
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a long one. I'll try to cut it short as much as possible. But I had a mom, a dad, and a brother, and that's all the family I grew up with. We didn't have cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents. The reason for that was because my mom, she's from Brazil, so in South America. She came here when she was 20. That's when she met my dad. They met down there, and then he brought her over here. My dad was 30 years older than my mom, so he was an older father. So he didn't have me until he was in his 70s. So really, I was just a small blip in his life, but he was this huge part of my life, because he's like the first thing I know. Your parents are the first thing you grow up with, and it's your like introduction to the world. My parents were very like opposite people from each other, like night and day. My mom was very, she had a really rough past, very horrible childhood. She grew up in poverty, a place of crime, and things like that take a heavy toll on your mental health. So when we think about the relationships we have with other people, especially raising a family, especially raising children, you try, everyone's best interest as a parent is for their kids to be better than them and to grow up to live a happy life. But for my mom, she didn't understand that. She didn't know how to take care of somebody else. So I always tell people, like, I raised myself. And the only reason I say that is my dad was a great parent. He's the greatest example of a good father and a good parent overall. For me, I would say he was like a mother and a father to me, because where my mom was lacking, he picked up that slack. My dad wasn't around a lot because he was like the sole provider of our family. He was a pilot, hence how they met each other, because he flew around the world, and then one of the places he went to was Brazil, and then that's how they met. Him being the sole provider of our family meant he had to leave for long periods of time, especially being a pilot. How it worked would be they would go I think they would be away for like 2 weeks, and then they would be back home for 2 weeks, and then constantly on and off like that. So I spent a lot of time, my early childhood, with my mom. Then my dad retired, and then when he came back and retired, I spent a little more time with him, more than like I ever did in my early ages. And then after that, he started experiencing old age, like symptoms of old age, like memory loss and health conditions and things like that. He stopped living with us. So it's like I didn't have my dad growing up, and then there was a time when he was fully there, like completely retired, like in my life, like completely. And then at 14, he was like gone again, and then he passed away.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Growing up with a father that is older, it is the expectation that you're going to outlive them, and you're going to outlive them very quickly. And since a young age, I've always accepted that, and I've just appreciated the time I did have my dad. So, with my mom having a lot of mental health issues, we were not close. I used to think I hate my mom. I don't hate her. I'm disappointed with her. And I really wanted a connection with my mom, but I just learned over time she's not capable of that, and I accept that. I accept her as she is. She needs a lot of help. She doesn't want it. Then I need to move on. The relationship I have with my dad was perfect, beautiful. We are very alike. He was very outgoing, charismatic, an adventurer, curious. He loved history. He taught me a lot of things. He lived through a lot of history. He was born in 1936. So I asked him growing up a lot of different questions because at the same time I'm in school learning about events that happened that he lived through. So I thought that was very interesting. He loved teaching me things and he loved sharing with me, and he wasn't an overbearing person. He was a very pleasant and comfortable person to be around. Like, he would light up a room when he entered it. He was a very funny guy too. Very calming effect, whereas my mom was very chaotic and aggressive and just all like these terrible emotions, so you don't really feel like good when you're around her. Yeah, that's the short synopsis of my parents.
So you mentioned that you had about your brother. Can you mention like the relationship with that?
Yeah. My brother and I, that's a very interesting one. I would say each relationship I had with the people in my family were very unique. With my brother, he was more similar to my mom. The mental health issues that she had, he exhibited as well. It could be genetic, it could be situational. I just know my brother and I are very opposite people as well. But the thing is, growing up, because we grew up in a very secluded, isolating area, I had nobody else. Like, my brother was my first playmate. My brother was my first friend. I always think that if we didn't grow up together, we wouldn't have ever crossed paths. We wouldn't be naturally friends. I enjoyed the time we had together, like when he would like play Xbox with me. We'd go out and we would adventure a lot. There was a lot of woods, a lot of forests, a lot of parks, a lot of places to walk to outside. So we would just go around and like explore our area, try to find little hideouts. Almost started a fire in the woods. That's a funny story. There was a cop that lived across the street, and he hunts in those woods. He saw us. We were like we were young. We were trying to pretend to camp, but we didn't realize if you literally start a fire in the woods, you can cause a forest fire. The cop saw us and was like, "What are you guys doing? Where do you live? Let me talk to your parents." We're like, "No, it's okay. We'll put it out." I had funny moments like that where it was like really scary, but it was like looking back, like, oh, that was like kind of stupid but kind of funny. And moments like that I enjoy with my brother. The moments I do not enjoy was when he would exhibit a lot of bad, negative mental health issues. He was very depressed, very self-loathing, very hard person to talk to, never always made sense or was coherent the older he got. And I feel like that's a lot of things that were similar to my mom. She was a very uncoherent person as well when you talk to her. You go around in circles and circles, and like you just don't, the connection's not there. I accept my brother as he is as well, but he's not the type of person I want like closely in my life. I care for him and I hope he's doing well and I wish the best for him, but I'm not here anymore to like fix people. Growing up with a family with two mentally ill people, a lot of that was put onto me, especially when my father left. I was the only person that like had their stuff together and knew what they wanted at such a young age, and I was the youngest person in the family. That's a lot of pressure to put on a child. I had to do a lot to work to figure out who I am and my role outside of that family, outside of being a good daughter, a good sister. I'm not the provider. I don't need to provide for anyone but myself, and if I bring people into this world, that's it. That's my only job, to be who I am and not let other people hold me back from that or make me feel bad about myself. I feel like my mom and my brother made me feel really bad about myself, but that's only because they were projecting their own insecurities onto me. And that right there took a very long time for myself to figure out. But, I did.
So you mentioned the two friends, the two other people around your age, and you went to the same school. So can you talk about like how it was making friends and how your experience with elementary school first started?
Okay, so your question is like, what was my experience making friends?
Yeah. In elementary school only.
Elementary school only.
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, okay. I'm trying to think back. Overall, I feel like it's always been a struggle. Because of the way I grew up. I grew up very in a bubble. My town was very isolating. I wasn't exposed to a lot of different cultures and backgrounds, ethnicities, different home lives as well. I thought my home life was very normal until I started talking to other people. Also, growing up, my mom never let me out of her sight. She was very possessive of me. She didn't want me to really have friends. She was worried about, that was kind of part of her condition. She was worried about people stealing me away from her. So it made it very hard to make friends because she wasn't comfortable about me sleeping over, me hanging outside of school with other people. And I wasn't comfortable bringing people to my house because my mom was very unpredictable with her behavior, and I did bring people over my house a couple times and it scared them. My mom was a very scary person. She has that effect on most people. As an adult, you understand, okay, there's something wrong with her. As a child, you're like, this scary lady is yelling. I don't know why. I don't want to be here. I feel uncomfortable. And that was embarrassing to me. Another reason why it was very hard to make friends. In school itself, I was a very outgoing person. I think people saw me and perceived me as a very kind and caring person and a good friend. There were also people growing up who came from backgrounds similar to mine, but not my exact situation, and went about life completely differently. That kind of situation, growing up in a chaotic home life, can create a child that is very isolating, very mean, kind of ready to be a bully kind of person. And I had a lot of people like that in my schools, unfortunately. I wouldn't say I was extremely bullied, but I definitely experienced being unwelcomed in certain circles in school, and it starts at a very young age. And as a young child, you don't really understand yourself, so it's also very hard to understand the people around you. If someone talks to you the wrong way or they exclude you, which is something that happened a lot, you start feeling like, what's wrong with me? You don't realize that those people, those children, are exhibiting what they see at home. They feel a certain way at home, they feel bad, they take it to school with them, and then they start treating other people poorly as well because that's the way that they're treated. I've always just been very different from a lot of people around me. Not saying I'm special or anything. I care about myself. I think I'm a really great person, but it's just I think very differently. And that's only naturally because of the way I am, but the situation I was put under, the pressure I was put under, was to grow up very fast. So in school, even starting at a young age as elementary, I felt mentally a lot older than the kids I was surrounded by. And I hold myself to a very high standard, but I don't hold other people to a high standard. That was the problem. I would dumb myself down, my personality and the way I talked, to meet the standard of my peers. And it made me forget who I was for a very long time. I also change at that time. I would change depending on the person that was in front of me as to be accepted by them. I wasn't accepted at home. That's how I felt like. So I go to school and I see these people that also don't accept me, are being very strange to me, being very unkind, I would say. And then I try to do more than I have to be their friend so they accept me. I was very insecure about how people perceived me and if I was well liked or not. And throughout all of school, I don't think I ever learned to stop doing that. It wasn't until I left college that I learned I don't have to do that anymore.
So I'm gonna mention or talk about if there's any teachers that really stood out to you in elementary school and middle school, um, that really helped you during like this time to like make friends or to kind of push you in a certain direction, to like help you from to where you are now?
Okay. I would say elementary school, no. My education and my environment in elementary school was very standard, a very standard experience. You don't start changing classes or having multiple classes until middle school, and that's when I started seeing people like teachers and like school counselors trying to help me. The older I got, the worse my situation at home got. And the big part, I was carrying so much inside. I was a perfectionist because my mom was very critical of me, and I brought that on to myself as a part of my characteristic as well, that I have to be critical of myself because I was surrounded by people that did not accept me at all. There was nothing I was doing that was unacceptable. I was a very kind and outgoing person, but like that's just the way that the world is. It's like no matter what you like, no matter what you do, no matter what you say, people were going to be like, if you don't think exactly how I am and you don't act exactly how I am, I don't like you because we're not the same. People try to look for your differences and try to make you feel bad for it. They don't want you to be special or be yourself. We're a very critical, judgmental society, and it starts at a young age. It starts at home as well, too. So I had a lot of pressure on me to be a certain way. And the one thing I thought about when I was in school is like, nobody can find out what was going on at home. My mom was training me at home to not talk about what was going on at home. People who are mentally ill, who recognize that they are but don't want to seek help, the one thing that they do is if they are creating victims, I would say. I mean, I use that word very loosely. I don't consider myself a victim, but like people that they're targeting their insecurities onto, they don't want people to find out what they're doing. If they're doing something bad and they know that they're doing something bad, they're treating someone the wrong way, they don't want other people to criticize them for it. They want to keep doing it. That's the way my mom was. So when I would go to school, right before I would go to school, especially when I was young at that elementary, middle school, she'd tell me, she'd look at me, and she'd be very scary and very intimidating about it. She's like, you do not talk about home. You do not talk about me. You do not talk about your family. You keep your mouth shut. And if I find out you do, then there will be consequences. That's the type of person my mom was. So that kind of scared me. And when I went to school, I was like, no one can find out anything. No one, like, just, it was just so stressful. So back to your question, people that have helped me, like teachers and like things like that. It wasn't until middle school, I wouldn't say a teacher, but a school counselor. She really helped me. I can't remember her name. I just know she was really old. She was a really nice old lady. At the time, I think this is around the time that my family started struggling financially because my dad had retired. I couldn't, the one moment that's like sticking out in my mind is I couldn't afford to be in cheerleading. I wanted to try out sports. This is when I started trying out sports because I realized that sports exist. My parents didn't like push me to do things, and I wanted to be like involved in my community, and I wanted to make new friends and, you know, just be a part of something. So I wanted to do cheerleading in middle school. I didn't know how to tumble. My parents couldn't afford to take me to gymnastics. Also, all the girls at that age, they had been tumbling since they were 3. So even if I started tumbling, I wouldn't pick up the skills that they were already at, you know? I wouldn't be at the same skill level as them. So that set me apart when it came to trying out for cheerleading. I couldn't afford the uniform. I couldn't afford the pictures. Financially, my parents, like, at that time could not support me. Like, we were lucky if we had food on the table. A lot of times my mom would, like, go to food pantries just so that we had stuff to eat. And then because of her mental health, like, she would, like, forget to go. And then I kind of struggled a lot. So the other thing the school counselor did for me was set up a plan so I had food at least when I was at school. She was just very helpful. I could come to her and I felt like I had a problem I couldn't solve on my own. She would try to help me out and we would go on home. But when it came to going to school and how, well, like me interacting with the school, she could kind of help with that. She paid for my uniform for cheerleading, and she paid for my pictures. And without her, like, it's such a small act of kindness, but it made me feel supported and cared for, that my needs were being met and someone was meeting my needs if they weren't going to be met at home. And then because of that experience, I was able to do cheerleading. This was 8th grade when this happened. I tried out 6th and 7th grade. I couldn't make the team because I couldn't tumble. So when I finally tried out in 8th grade and I got on the team, I was like very excited. But then the obstacle of being on the team was a challenge, but she really helped me through that. I'll never forget that because she gave me the opportunity to be a part of something. And 8th grade cheerleading at my school was so fun because we were part of Spirit Week. We would go to the basketball games. I made new friends because of that. It just helped me have a more normal, stable life, you know? It made me feel normal, and I really appreciated that.
So I'm gonna a little deviate about and ask you about who your or when your first crush kind of happened, because a lot of people.
Oh boy.
It kind of happens in middle school. For me, it happened in middle school. It happened 6th grade, 7th grade. So I was wondering if it happened at middle school, or if it was like more of like a late bloomer of like high school or whatever, elementary school.
Yeah. Good question. Okay. So for me, I was a very loving child. I loved people. Children that don't get a lot of love at home, they tend to over-love, kind of love bomb people. Unfortunately, that's the type of child I was. So it was very easy for me to feel like I had a connection with people. And then sometimes it'd be too much. It wasn't healthy. I don't think I had a good interpretation of love at a young age. I mean, my dad loved me, but we never had that conversation. We never talked about it. When you have like crushes on people and you start I would say at the time, definitely heterosexual. So I liked boys. My sexuality has changed over time, and I still go back and forth on it. I don't put a label on it now, but definitely as a child, heterosexual, because that's what I was taught, so that's what I knew, and that's what I was comfortable with. There was a lot of, I don't know, I was a very flirtatious child as well. My first crush, I honestly can't remember. There was a boy that was older than me on my bus. I would say 3 grades older than me, so I had a crush on him, but I only had a crush on him because he didn't like me. And I was young, and I was like, ooh, someone older than me. There was a fascination, a curiosity about that. I had my first kiss when I was 13. It was also with an older boy, too. I was 13, he was 16. That's a red flag right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm coming out of 8th grade, never started high school, and you're, halfway through high school. That's weird. I was I don't really care much about my looks. I like to look good for myself, but now I don't care how other people think of me or if they think I'm pretty or not. When I was a kid, though, I got a lot of attention because of my looks. I would say I was a attractive-looking kid. Definitely a weird kid. Had a lot of things to work through, but because I didn't know myself yet. But I think that's the only reason why I drew an older crowd to me. People my age did not like me. People in my school was not attracted to me. Maybe they were, but they never came up to me and told me. I never had a boyfriend throughout high school or school in general. I definitely liked people though, but they were not serious, you know? I wouldn't find myself wanting to be in a relationship with them. I was oh, he's attractive, or oh, he has a lot of confidence, or he plays a sport that I really like. So I want to I wanted to like him because we had something in common. So I can't pinpoint a certain crush, but I definitely liked multiple people, I would say.
So I'm gonna talk more about high school, moving on. High school is a very interesting place for a lot of people.
Oh yeah, it was definitely an interesting place for me as well.
you know, it's like you get a little bit older. Um, you know, I mean, especially coming from my own experience, uh, middle school sucked, and then I got to high school, and it was like after sophomore year, it was a lot better for me, and then I just kept getting better and better as time moved on for each grade and going into college. So I was wondering, like, we could start off with with the transformation between middle school and high school. So it would be like freshman year, how it was, how the changes are for the basically like between middle school and high school, like how the changes like affected you.
Okay, I gotcha. I have to say my experience was opposite. The older I got and the higher of the grade I got into, the worse it got for me. I feel like my best time in school was middle school because things were easy. The classes were easy. I had been with the same group of people since we were in kindergarten. I knew my town. I knew my peers. We got to high school, and we're a regional high school, so we had kids coming from 3 different middle schools. And then I felt like I knew nobody. Like, I went from knowing everybody to knowing nobody. And quickly, kids from my middle school, like from my town, they were quickly dividing, freshman year, they were quickly dividing into their cliques and the friends that they were going to be friends with for all 4 years. And I already had a lot of trouble trying to find a place where I belonged, and it made it a whole lot worse. I looked at myself and I couldn't find where I belonged at all because I wasn't one way. I was, you know that book, Divergent?
Yeah.
Divergent, if like nobody knows, it's about a dystopian society where they segregate their citizens into certain characteristics, and then that's their whole life. That's their community. In this sense of high school, I felt very divergent. I was very smart, so I was in like AP honor courses. I did sports. I was very athletic and very active. I was also very creative. I got in high school, I started to get into poetry and writing. So that's already 3 different stereotypical high school groups right there. So I didn't want friends from one group. I wanted friends from all around. But that's not really how my high school worked. If you were that type of person, then you kind of found yourself more alone, really. It was hard for me. I didn't like that. I wish people were more friendly at my high school as well. People were not friendly at my high school. Very selective people were, and they were very quiet. They weren't really popular. I really wanted to be part of that crowd. I tried so hard to be popular. I felt very popular in middle school, and then I got to high school and I knew nobody, and nobody knew me, and nobody really gave me a chance. If they thought I was just kind and nice, then they thought I was boring and not fun to be around. And at the time, I later learned more about my peers after I left high school. I didn't know that a lot of people were struggling, because all I could see was my struggle at home. My home life was getting worse at the time too. At 14, I lost my dad, you know? Not in the sense that he passed away yet, but in the sense that he stopped living with us. And then all I had was my mom and my brother, and they were very toxic people. And I would go to school to classes full of students that were very toxic people as well. So I was just feeling hurt, like at home and at school, and just really did not feel like I belonged. I had no idea who I was. It was a very confusing time. Would not go back to that. I would do things differently now that I'm a stronger person. I've had time to think about that experience. But at the time, I just know I couldn't have done things or said things any differently than I had. Yeah, very confusing time, I would say. Not very pleasant, but we got through it.
Now, you said that you were in cheerleading through middle school. Were you still in cheerleading in high school, or did you just kind of be like, realize that this isn't really for me? I'm gonna leave.
Both. So I went into high school as a cheerleader. After freshman year, I quit. The reason why was Uh, there were people on my team that majority of them were not the type of people I wanted to be friends with, unfortunately. Um, and cheerleading got more competitive in high school as well. And I still, without that tumbling, I wasn't up to par with the skill set that my friends had. So if in sports, at least at my high school, if you were not the star player, no one wanted to really be friends with you. No one really wanted to talk to you. People only wanted to be friends with the people that they felt like were as good as they were, and I could see that I wasn't. So I cut my losses, and I quit. I felt very unwelcomed on the team. I had a really, I'm just gonna say, a mean coach. She was very hard on us. She was very strict, and she didn't really appreciate me or respect me the way that I wanted to be respected or appreciated. So, hard time as well. That sucked because I really wanted to keep doing cheerleading, but I found other things to do. The longest sport I did was lacrosse. I did that all 4 years of high school. In my town, lacrosse is not available until you are a freshman in high school for girls. So now this was actually a really great opportunity for me because I'm at the same skill level as everyone else. At first, there was no competition freshman year with lacrosse. The next year, and then the year after that, and then senior year, that's when the competition started. I wouldn't say I was the worst player, but I also wasn't the best. There was definitely other girls that picked it up quicker than I did, and were star athletes on varsity. They pulled freshmen to start on varsity, and then those girls, they played for the rest of high school on varsity. And it was interesting because those were the girls actually from my middle school that I was friends with. We joined lacrosse all together to start a new sport together, and then they started doing better than me, and then we drifted apart. So then I had to find a new friend group, and I did. And the girls that I found to be friends with in high school, they weren't athletes. They ended up being more the intelligent and creative type. The girls, they did art, and they also were in my AP and honor classes. So those are the type of people I became friends with. The problem with that friend group I didn't learn until my senior year was that they were very critical people, very judgmental. They held themselves to a perfectionist standard, and they expected the same from other people. I also was not the smartest person in my high school either. I didn't do the best, I wasn't like valedictorian or anything. My friend in that friend group was the valedictorian of our grade. That's a huge expectation to meet. I wasn't her. I couldn't be as smart as her. She was better at school than I was, and that kind of made me upset because that's who I wanted to be. I wanted to be the best athlete. I wanted to be the best student. I wanted to be well liked. I wanted to be popular. I wanted to be all these different things, and I was pulling myself in all these different directions. I kind of forgot what your question was. Did I answer it?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, we can end it at that.
So I know that you mentioned that you wrote some poetry. Mm-hmm. Was there any piece of writing or poem that you still to this day, I'm like, this is the proudest, like this is like the number one thing that I still think is like the best thing that I ever did?
I haven't looked at my poetry from high school in a very long time. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, there was definitely. High school was a very hard. As much as it was a hard time for me, it was a very insightful time. It was a perfect time to pick up writing. I didn't have a lot of people in my life that I could talk to about how I felt and what I was going through, and I decided to use writing as a coping mechanism, and it worked really well for me. It created the most beautiful poetry that I could ever write. I'm very proud of it because it was perceived very well by my classmates and by my teacher at the time that I did poetry with. I ended up I know you didn't really ask me this question about high school, but my creative writing teacher was the most supportive person throughout all 4 years of high school for me. She was like my rock. While everything was very chaotic and very confusing, she was the one person I could come to and just talk to. And it made me a better writer because I enjoyed the teacher, I enjoyed the class, I enjoyed the curriculum, and she taught me things that I never knew before. The writing really teaches you more about yourself. You have to think about your environment, you have to think about yourself to understand what you're writing, what is your message, what do you want to put on paper to teach other people. My poetry was put into the literary magazine at my school multiple times. I ended up holding a position on the team that would put that book together as well. So I ended up being on the other end of it, judging other people's poetry. It was a very surreal kind of experience because I was like, who am I to judge what's good, what's not, you know? But it was a very fun and just a fun learning experience though, getting to be exposed to other people's poetry as well. My thing is, I've always said that I've been years above my peers, just a very mature person, that it showed in my writing. I think that's why it was perceived very well, because I was writing not as a high school student, but as someone that was beyond that. And a lot of people could see that. It was something new. You saw someone like my classmates' poetry, not to sound cocky, it's just a fact. You saw my classmates' poetry, and then you saw my poetry, you wouldn't think it was written by the same age group at all. That's why it was perceived very well. It was something that people have never seen before. That's why my teacher enjoyed it, because if I'm speaking a voice that is beyond my years to someone that's an adult and has been around poetry, has been teaching poetry for a long time, she's relating to something in my poetry then. When you can create something that other people relate to, you did a good job. I was proud of nothing at the time for myself. I wasn't proud of the way I looked. I wasn't proud of the way myself as a student. I wasn't proud of myself as an athlete, but I was proud of my writing, and that's all I had. And that just helped me. That helped my confidence. Where everything else was falling apart, but this one thing, it was going really well for me.
So I know that you sing a little bit. Were you in choir at all in high school, or did you just now start to be like, I feel like I could sing, and or I should, get into music?
So, I was in choir not in high school. I didn't do anything that was theatrical or music related in high school. I did that more when I was younger. So I was in choir in elementary school, and I was also in band in elementary school. I played the violin first and then the clarinet. Hated the clarinet. I switched schools. I moved around a little bit when I was that age. So the school I was going to, they taught violin. Loved the violin. I picked up really well. And then when I moved back to my district, they didn't have the violin. So I wanted to play some kind of instrument. The only option that made sense was clarinet, but I hated it. A lot of kids in elementary school did choir just to get out of class. So that's what I did. I just did whatever my peers were doing. I enjoy singing. I've always enjoyed singing. My interest in singing didn't come up at that age. I was born singing, basically. I spent a lot of time on my own, and I would make up little songs and sing to myself. My mom and my brother hated when I sang. They just told me to shut up all the time. That kind of killed my confidence with it. That's why I kept it to myself. So in middle school, I remember I tried out for a play. I didn't get the part. And I didn't want to be part of the choir. I didn't like singing with other people. I wanted to sing alone. So because I didn't get the part, I kind of scratched and it was like, maybe this isn't for me. I did try out for a talent show middle school. I didn't really try out. Everyone was able to be in the talent show. It went really bad. I forgot all the lyrics to the song I was singing. And I was in front of, at the time, I perceived them as the most popular people in my grade. And I felt embarrassed. And people were... that killed my confidence to sing in my head, I told myself, you are not good enough to do this, so keep it to yourself. So it was a hobby at the time that I felt like I was a little embarrassed to have, because when you sing, you're putting yourself up for judgment. When people hear music, instantly they judge it, whether they like it or not, whether they like your voice or not. At the time, I just couldn't handle that kind of criticism. So in high school, I did not want to put myself in a position where people could make fun of me. I already felt very insecure about myself. And I just wanted to fit in. I was really focused on that. I didn't think singing was the place where I was going to fit in. Yeah.
So, you said that you went to college as well, so you moved from high school to college. So can you talk about how different, because it's extremely different.
Yeah, it was.
High school, so can you talk about, like, your experience with college compared to high school?
It was a culture shock, that's the best way I could explain it. My college was in a more urban area. I've never been in an urban area before. This is the first time I'm surrounded by people that are not the same background, culture, or ethnicity as me. I was a minority at my college. Never knew what that felt like before. It was definitely a really good life lesson to learn, though, to be exposed to so many different types of people like that. I noticed the big difference was our classroom discussions. When we were in high school, we had classroom discussions. Nobody disagreed with each other, ever. No one had opposing views or perspective on any of the topics that we would talk about. I get to college, those classroom discussions were a war zone. A literal war zone. It was very interesting to watch and be a part of. My college focused heavily on racial differences, because we had a college of mixed ethnicities and cultures. So they wanted to teach students right away as freshmen to be accepting of people who don't look like you and weren't raised the same as you, basically. And they kind of overkilled it, though, because it was like part of every single course and curriculum that we had at that college. So that was different for me. There was no more like cliques anymore. Everyone was kind of more able to be themselves. People still judged you, don't get me wrong. And I still met people that were mean to me and just like not accepting of me. But it was like different, though. It was more people. College is bigger. It's more students. So if you don't find a place right away, it's kind of like okay, because there's so many different people to meet. You know, you're not stuck with the same people like you were from kindergarten to 12th grade. I joined a sorority my freshman year of college. I did not stay in the sorority. I realized that at the time, when I first started it, it did help me make more friends, and it did help me to feel like I'm accepted again, and that I was like a sense of popularity. I think majority of people in my sorority did like me, but there was a small minority of people who did not like me, and that was for the same reasons that people wouldn't like me in high school, and that was a fact because I was a very kind, caring person. Unfortunately, people who are very miserable, they get jealous of people that can find peace in themselves and can be kind to other people, and they try to tear you down. There are two types of people in this world. There are people that are going to build you up and support you, and then there are people that get jealous of you and want to tear you down. Especially being a part of a group of just girls. I've never had that before. I did have friend groups that were just girls in high school and middle school and elementary school, but it was hard then, and it was still hard in college. Even though we were adults, you still are gonna get judged. Sorority girls, there's a lot of stereotypes about Greek life, sororities, and fraternities. Some of them are true, some of them are not. I didn't know what a sorority meant until I was part of one. I thought it was just a time to, like, party and have fun. No, we actually did a lot of work. There was a lot of work, and it was really stressful. It almost felt like a full-time job. We were running a business. We had to plan events. We had to donate to charities. We had to set up the events to donate to charities. We had to do a certain amount of community service. We had requirements, certain courses we had to take, certain classes and events we had to attend. A lot of things were mandatory to do, and it took up a lot of time. It took up so much time that I didn't have time to study anymore, or actually be a good student in college and pass my courses, because I felt the stress of meeting these mandatory requirements. The sorority helped me, but then it got to a point when it stopped helping me and started doing the opposite effect, which is just make it harder for me to be in school. My mental health definitely changed throughout college as well. I started in a really great spot, despite all the difficulty and my childhood, having an effect on me, because once we got to senior year of high school, things started moving really fast, like bang, bang, bang. Senior year, it was a very strange time. My dad passed, and then a boy I was talking to killed himself. Trigger. I don't know if you need to have a trigger on your podcast.
I'll do it in the
okay.
beginning of it.
No,
I'm sorry to hear that as well.
Yeah, it was a very sad time. But then I had to quickly pick myself up, apply to colleges, get my applications out, and then go off to college and live there fully. So I had to really cope with something that was very traumatic very fast, and then be in the right mental state to start doing really hard work, that college level work, So I didn't have time to grieve about those deaths that happened senior year of high school. I was just happy to be in college. It's what I always wanted to do. It's the reason why I focused so hard on my academics. My goal was to get to college. And because of the things that I suffered from in high school, and high school being so hard for me, I missed a lot of school. I would be absent for weeks on end and months. So my grades in high school were not good. I'm lucky I passed high school because of that. No matter how smart I was, no matter how hard I tried, if you're not in school, you're missing out. Your grades are not going to be 100%. And it showed in my GPA. My GPA was so low by the end of high school, by senior year, no schools wanted me. And that was very devastating because I had a dream, and unfortunately, the obstacles in my life were going to get in the way of that. I'm actually very lucky that I was very close to my school counselors in high school. I got denied from the college that I ended up going to because of my GPA, because that's all they were looking at. I told my school counselor, I said, this is the only school I applied to, and they denied me. I don't have time anymore to apply to another school. That was it for me. I would have to wait. And what does that look like? At the time, I was living with a foster parent. I was away from my mom. So I didn't know what was going to happen to me, what my life would look like if I wasn't going to start college the same time that my friends were, So what she did was she contacted the director, the dean of students basically, and said, please relook at this student's application. She's a really good student. She's just been through a lot, and it showed in her GPA, unfortunately. That dean of students director, he sent me a very, very nice email back. He is the reason why I got accepted into college. I think how the applications work is that it's just random people that work at the school that are in charge of that. They look at the applications, they look at one thing, and then that's it. If you don't meet a certain expectation, you get cut. The dean of students himself looking at it, he's not just looking at the GPA anymore because we reached out to him. Now he's looking at my overall application. He saw my, there is a personal essay you can attach to your application. He saw my writing, me explaining myself, me explaining my GPA, the lessons I learned from my experience, my horrible experience with my childhood and my family and my school life, and how I still came out better from it. And even though it doesn't show my GPA, it showed in my character, showed in my work ethic. I had a drive to get out of this situation and find a future. And I thought my future was going to be in college. That's the start of a future. It's why most people go to college, because they want a career, they want a life for themselves. My future depended on me at the time going to college, so I really needed this. And that was displayed in that essay. He loved my writing. He said, you have a voice in your writing, and you described yourself and explained yourself so well that I want to give you a chance. I can't give you the major you want to go into because I want to do biology, and that's a very academically challenging course. He said, you can come in as an undeclared student and then work your way towards improving your GPA to get into that program. And that's what I did. I got into my program. Everyone said that you can't do it when I got to college because of my high school GPA, because, I don't know, overall it was always hard for me to learn. Later I found out, after I was already done with college and I dropped out, I have ADHD. This whole time, since I was a kid, I had ADHD. My brother was diagnosed with ADHD at a very young age. We knew his whole life that he had ADHD. It showed in his academics. It showed at home. He was a very aggressive, had a lot of behavioral problems as a kid, and it was due to his, what do they call it? Hyperactivity. I never displayed any of those symptoms. They actually say that it's harder to diagnose ADHD in girls. They don't find out until their 20s that they have ADHD. That's why it was so hard for me to sit down and read a book. I forced myself. That's the kind of work ethic I have. That's amazing. Despite all the challenges. Also, my family, they didn't have time to focus on me. They were dealing with my brother, and then overall we were dealing with my mom. And then it came to a time when we were dealing with my dad. Everyone else struggled in my family, but I wasn't allowed to. I was kind of overlooked, just seen as the person who had their stuff together, that wasn't struggling with anything. I had to keep this composure, this strength about myself that, I didn't actually really have at the time. So having ADHD was not something that anyone looked into for me at all. It took me going to therapy after I dropped out of college to learn that I had ADHD. It makes a lot of sense now. I would beat myself up about my grades a lot. I did well for myself in school, but I wasn't perfect. I wasn't proficient. Sometimes I would score below average on certain things, and it was because there were certain things I couldn't sit down and really fully teach myself. I feel like I can't even say I was a good listener, but there were some topics that just I could pick up and I understood, but the topics I couldn't pick up, that's where my scores failed, basically. And that really bothered me. For you to work on a topic that you don't understand well, you need to sit down and learn it by yourself. I didn't have the focus to do that. So I only did as well as I did based on what I heard in class or what the activities we did in class. I know this sounds not important, but this was a revelation for me. And now I know. When I figured that out, and my mental health in college changed because I started doing bad in school again. And then I stopped showing up to class. And then there was a stress from the sorority being put on me that the last focus I had was on school. I just couldn't focus anymore. That's when I decided to drop out. I just knew that I'm getting more mentally ill, and that's because I'm not meeting my expectation. I'm not doing as well as I want to, and I need to take time off and figure out what I really want to do and see if school is even the right choice for me. And it was a very scary decision to do because I felt like if I dropped out of college, my life is over. I won't have the future that I wanted. I won't be able to be picked out for a career because I don't have a degree. I felt like it was going to put me 10 steps back. Now that I've been out of college for, let's say, a year and a half now, almost 2 years, it was the best decision I could have made at the time. I'm a much happier person. I've been able to work on my insecurities and the things that were bothering me. I was able to really assess the childhood I had and all these like traumatic events that happened to me, and like understand that, first of all, was not my fault at all. Anything that ever happened to me was not my fault. They were really circumstantial. The way that people treated me was not my fault. Part of the depression I was feeling came from the fact that people perceived me so poorly, people treated me so poorly, so I must be a terrible person. I felt like people hated me, so I hated myself. I internalized all these experiences that were happening to me, and I started telling myself that I am a terrible person. And when you start having a voice in your head that is so negative, you can't do anything. You really can't. You're even lucky if you can function and get up in the morning. That's what I was facing every single day for at least, I would say, I always had depression, but it was situational depression because of the way I was treated. Then I got to a point where I wasn't being treated that way anymore, at least by my mom or my brother, just by strangers, but it wasn't to the degree that my mom and brother treated me. I started doing it to myself. I started treating myself poorly. I never thought that would ever be a problem. I thought once I stopped living with my mom and brother, all my problems would be fixed. No. That was a terrible perspective to have. It was wrong. I actually had more problems after I left my mom and my brother. And it's not because I made a bad decision to leave them. It was because I had to start dealing with myself. I never dealt with myself before. I never looked into myself and understood who I was as a person. I thought I knew who I was, but no, I really didn't. I was taking care of everyone else except myself.
So when did you say you moved out on your own? So was it like when you dropped out of college, was that around the same time that you left the foster parent when you were living with them, or did you?
Yes. It happened a little bit before, actually. I was still in college for a couple months after, but then shortly after, I did drop out. I started living with an acquaintance. When I tell this story, I usually say friend, but no, it was really acquaintance because I didn't really know this person. We just did, we did an activity together. We were part of this, a group in the community. I'll just leave it at that. It was volunteer work that we were doing. That's how I met this person. They were really toxic people. So I went from a toxic foster parent to another toxic house, basically. I don't know how else to explain it. It wasn't until after that I realized maybe I should try being on my own. It was very scary because I'm very young. I'm only 22 now, and when all this happened, I was around 21. That's a very young age to move out and be on your own. Most people don't do it at that age. I don't recommend it. I wouldn't have done it unless I really knew that it would be beneficial for me. I didn't know if I really could do it until I started doing it. When pushed against the wall, you can accomplish anything. I was put in a situation where it was either be homeless or find a place to live and start supporting myself. I did not want to end up in a shelter. That's not the kind of future or quality of life I saw for myself. So I started working really hard to create a life that I was comfortable with. I would say right where I am now is the most comfortable I've ever been, and that's because I'm taking care of myself for once in my life. My quality of life is not in the hands of somebody else. I am fully independent. I know what my needs and wants are. Nobody else does. They think that they know what is in your best interest, but they're actually looking out for themselves. Most people that I lived with, they saw me living with them as a way to get more money for their own self, for their own income. When I was in foster care, they get paid for that. My foster parent treated me exactly that. Like, as somebody that family right after my foster parent, they asked me to pay rent. They saw me as extra income, and they treated me as extra income. Now that I fully support myself, there is no one that can treat me poorly because I am on my own. It's a great thing. Independence, I recommend people finding independence when they're ready, because it's going to make you really figure out yourself. Who are you outside of everybody else, you know? How much can you handle? How much stress can you handle? And really help you find a good work ethic. I'm very appreciative of everything I have right now. And the best part of it is I gave it to myself. That's the best gift I could give myself. My quality of life.
So I'm gonna ask, like, I mean, I don't know if you pretty much answered it, but are you happy? Like, are you where you want to be right now?
Mm-hmm.
Are you're satisfied? Maybe not fully satisfied, but are you satisfied with where you are right now?
We're never fully satisfied because we do not settle. When I say we, I mean me, but in general, I think that's how people should live their life. Never fully satisfied. That doesn't mean don't be grateful for what you have. Always be appreciative. Always remember where you came from as well. I came from a very bad place, and I could have stayed in that bad place, but I got out of it. And in the moment when I was in that bad place, I never thought or saw myself as ever getting out of it. The fact that I accomplished the biggest obstacle in my life. Now it only has set me up for a better future, because if I could accomplish what I never thought I could accomplish, what else can I do? That is a really great motive, a really great purpose to have in life. Understand that this is what you've done. You got over a huge hurdle in your life. What's next? You asked me, am I happy right now? More recently, yes. Happiness did not come as soon as I found independence. I was actually very terrified when I moved out on my own. I didn't know if I could financially support myself. I also felt very lonely because I was alone. I didn't have roommates. I was taking care of a place all by myself, and I didn't really have friends anymore. All my friends from college lived in different areas, and I lost a lot of friends as well just because I wasn't in school anymore. You kind of just lose touch with people sometimes. So I made new friends. But then I started really feeling like I need someone to constantly be in my life every day to feel happy. That's when I figured out, not until literally recently, that I may be physically independent, but I was not emotionally independent at all. I went from boyfriend to boyfriend to boyfriend to boyfriend. I have never really been single for that long. Still am not. I'm technically single right now, but I still pursue people. But I've learned now I can pursue people if I choose to, or choose to not pursue people, and I will still be the same person. I will still have the exact same worth as I do right now. I put a lot of my worth onto other people and how they treat me. But then I forgot, and I never realized people aren't perfect. People aren't always a good judge of character either. Some people are struggling and they take it out on other people. Why should I feel bad about myself because of some way that someone treated me? Once I started realizing all these different things, really realizing that I'm not emotionally independent is where I can finally work on it. And now that I am physically independent and starting to work on my emotional independence, I'm starting to find a happier, more peaceful life. My depression, it comes and goes now. Now it's not every day. Now every day I'm not always having a bad day. I'm starting to have more good days now than bad days. I'm starting to understand the things that stress me out and understanding better ways to cope with it. The other thing is my anxiety. I started developing anxiety. I might have always had it, but really didn't start noticing it until college. And then especially after I moved out on my own, I had very bad anxiety, aggressive panic attacks. And they would come like in the middle of the night, right when I'm about to sleep. And I was alone. I didn't really have people to go to or people to talk to. So then I really had to figure out how to calm myself down. The anxiety, I have anxiety at work as well, all the time. Working in a restaurant, you're put under a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. Everyone needs you at once, and everyone is expecting the most out of you at once. It's a lot of pressure to be put under. That's where the anxiety comes from as well. Underperforming, that's my worst fear. Not meeting the expectations of others. I can't do much about that. Restaurants are a stressful environment. I can only deal with and do something about how I feel when I go home. Making sure that I'm de-stressing after a very stressful day. My anxiety is almost completely gone. I still experience it at work, but now outside of work, I'm not taking it back with me. And I'm really happy about that because I was really tired of having stomach aches. I was having very bad stomach aches, and now it's more limited, it's less. And I'm very happy about that.
So I'm going to ask you about the future.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you see yourself in 10 years?
It is a mystery now. I used to have expectations for my future, but now that I'm being more honest with myself and I'm starting to discover myself more, I realize having expectations for the future is not very healthy perspective to have. Always have goals, right? And always have a purpose to want to do more and do better in life, but I don't have like a certain due date of when I need to achieve those things. I'm kind of letting myself get to those milestones when they come. So I feel like it's a more natural way to live your life. The only thing I want for my future, the only thing I've ever wanted for my life is to be happy. My happiness is my number one priority, because I spent a lot of wasted time not being happy. Not saying that, I should judge myself for not being happy, not being able to feel happiness. No. Not being happy for so long was a big learning experience. It's the thing that taught me that I should be more happy in my life. I deserve that. I should give myself that. I should do whatever it takes to find that peace. So having happiness is a big thing that I want in my future. I want to explore music. I want to have a music career. Music makes me very happy. I love when I sing. I don't always love my voice, but I love when I sing. The feeling of singing makes me happy. And I want other people to experience that when I sing. I want to make other people happy. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because I never want people to feel the unhappy feelings that I have felt. I never want people to feel as terrible as I have felt in my life. If people do, my big goal is to be the one thing that cheers them up. And I think I could really do that with music.
So I'm gonna end it off here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything to shout out? Any YouTube channel that you're working on to post your music, or did you create anything yet, so that people can subscribe to it?
Not yet. We're really in the early stages of it. It took me a long time. I've always sung and always been interested in learning about music, and I've kind of explored it a little bit more. This summer I started taking piano classes. I did stop because of financial reasons, but when I'm more financially stable, I do want to pick it back up. I also want to teach myself a lot of new things. One thing I'm working on is trying to get an internship at a music studio, but I have to teach myself a lot of things before I'm eligible for that. So we're really in the beginning stages of everything. My goal for the end of the year is to put out music and to start accounts that focus on music. So it's going to take a little bit of time right now. So right now, no. I have started on things. I've started on songs. I have lyrics laying around. I have music on my computer that I've sung to and, started a track for, but nothing that is, really finished yet.
Alright. So thank you, everyone, for watching. Make sure you subscribe and hit the like button.